We now move on to session two, which is on redesigning the workplace, a new normal for women and young leaders. The freedom to work remotely can lead to a dramatic reconfiguration of organizations from a diversity point of view, including greater opportunities for women and young leaders. We are honored to have Amira Shah share with us her thoughts on this very pertinent topic. Amira Shah is the promoter and managing director of Metropolis Healthcare. She is named amongst in Asia's most powerful women in business by Forbes Asia. She is an independent director on the board of reputed Indian companies, including Kaya, Torrent Pharma, Shoppers Stop, and others. And she is also an advisor to the Baylor College of Medicine, Texas. She is also on the Global Advisory Board of AXA, a Paris headquartered company. Amira has set up Empowerus in 2017, a not-for-profit platform for women-led businesses to find advice, mentorship, and microfunding. She received a degree in finance from the University of Texas at Austin and has completed the prestigious Owner-President Management Program at Harvard Business School. A very warm welcome to you, Amira. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, we continue to live in a world of patriarchy and old rules. But, as we've all been hoping that things are going to significantly change, obviously now the time has come, as we would say, winter has come. And I can throw to you a lot of data and a lot of statistics about how things have been in the past and how things should be and what they will be post-COVID. I think there's lots of information out there. But I think what I've realized in the last 3 months of COVID craziness is that really data is not as important as the human spirit. And that's what we should be really talking about. I'll start with a couple of examples that I've personally seen. Let's take the example of Dr. Kirti, who's been head of operations at our global reference laboratory at Metropolis, a frontline worker, a COVID warrior, as people call her. She's a mother of 2 children, caretaker of a home, and spends 14 to 16 hours workday every day for the past 3 months. She took her HCQ and she got to work, dealing with thousands of infectious samples daily, answering calls from doctors and governments at all times of the day and night, and with constant pressure from parents to stay at home and not put herself at risk. And I asked her, I said, why do you still do it? And her answer was simple. This is my job. This is my purpose. This is what I'm trained for. Or let's take the example of Ashish, who runs the molecular biology department at Metropolis, who after 2 months of putting himself at risk for 15 hours a day, finally got infected and had symptoms of breathlessness and fever. And as he self-quarantined at a hotel, informed us that he would keep working from his room and approving results and training new people to do the job he couldn't do physically and ensuring that patients got their results on time. There have been many Kirtis and Ashishas in Metropolis and across the healthcare spectrum in India and globally. What motivates them to do what they do? A sense of purpose, passion for their profession, and a sense of contribution in very, very challenging times. This is what I have seen from most women and most young adults during this time. Most women don't work for money or power. They do it from a sense of passion and fulfillment. And the young adults of today are unshackled by the conditioning of yesteryears, thoughts of accumulation and constantly making money and savings, and genuinely believe that an egalitarian world will be better for everybody. These 2 segments of society are naturally in a position to positively contribute to our post-COVID world in a very, very positive world, more than anybody else. And going forward, I think self-management is going to be the key skill to succeed. Managing the home and work balance, managing your own health, managing your emotions during very challenging times, I think are going to be very, very critical aspects. And those who are steeped in very traditional patterns and are not able to break them, those who need consistent management, like we did in the pre-COVID times, and had old ways of moving up the corporate ladder, I think are going to find it very difficult to grow in this new world. Women and young leaders actually have the ability to adapt, the ability to multitask, the ability to move ahead with passion and purpose, and therefore will be most adept at transitioning to the new rules of the new world. And this can be a big opportunity for them to step up in their professional lives. We've always talked about women multitasking. We've always talked about how they're able to think about their baby 1 minute and think about a very large billion-dollar deal the next minute. And this is a skill that's now going to be in huge demand. Because if you're going to stay at home and work or work from anywhere, you're going to have the need to be able to move in and out of your focus areas. You have to have the ability to be able to 1 minute plan what you're cooking at home. You have to have the ability at the same time to be able to focus on work. And having that micro and macro perspective to move in and out is actually going to be a skill that not necessarily everybody in the workplace has, but they're going to have to build. And while usually you've seen men as the largest number of people in the workplace, usually becoming successful and moving up the corporate ladder, this skill of younger adults of fulfillment of passion and this skill of women as multitasking are actually inherently now going to come up in this post-COVID time to be the real skills that are going to help people in this new post-COVID world. So what is the professional world going to look like for women and young adults post this crisis? Like always, human emotion is going to swing in a pendulum, and therefore the knee-jerk reaction is to work permanently from home. But as we know, everything extreme has its pitfalls. So the key is to reach a balance of work from anywhere that provides us the the convenience, and the second is work together, which will allow us the social engagement with our peers that will help the juices in our brain to really flow, because you can't do brainstorming sitting as an individual at home or in a co-working space and expect to come up with innovative, brilliant ideas. We need to talk ideas with each other to be able to do that. So this balance of working from anywhere and at the same time working with your peers, I think, how do we find that balance in each corporate is going to be very critical. Since every pandemic must have acronyms like COVID-19, SD for social distancing, WFH for work from home, WHA from work from anywhere, where's my hand san? I've heard that. Let's Qteen, I've heard that as well. I decided to come out with my own acronym for what I believe will be the new normal. Achoo! No, that was not my sneezing, but that was actually my new acronym. All jokes aside, I think if we look at it, we need to look at adaptability and analytics. I think adaptability in the ability to be able to move in and out of really difficult situations, be able to adapt to, like we said, the home and the workplace, and be able to do that very seamlessly and quickly is going to be a very key skill, along with the analytics of not being able to necessarily get all data to us in the easiest fashion, but to be able to get analytics that help us to make decisions very quickly, even though we're not sitting in the workplace. We also are going to move from connection to contribution. I think while all of us seek a lot of human connection in the workspace, I think one of the key things that's going to be required is going to be contribution and how we see our fulfillment and purpose in the new horizon. Are we really adding value to the world? Are we making a positive impact? I think these are going to be questions that are going to come up, and we are going to see the things that fulfill us and satisfy move from connection to contribution. I think the third thing is when you think of human interaction, you're going to think about the seamless integration of human interaction with technology. And that's the H in my acronym. We can't function alone anymore. Finding this balance between our interaction and learning how to use the technology tools in the best way possible is going to be very critical skill in the new world. Those who are technologically not adept are going to find it quite challenging. And of course, the last part of the acronym is out of office. Now, out of office doesn't necessarily mean at home. And it also doesn't necessarily mean from a co-working space. I think we have to use this opportunity to be more in the field. We don't want to be cooped up in our corporate offices. We actually want to be in our manufacturing facilities. We want to be in our labs. We want to be, with the customer. We want to be with our vendors. And I think this actually gives us an opportunity where even if we land up going to the corporate headquarters once a week or twice a week, the other days of the week, if we're not working from home or working from co-working spaces, we have the ability to actually go and work out of our field offices with our customers, our vendors, and our other stakeholders. I believe this will really enrich our working lives as we would collect different kinds of feedback from customers who would give us a completely new insight into our businesses. While this pandemic has been very local in nature, I don't believe we can come up with a one solution fits all. While we've had tremendous pressure in cities like Bombay and Delhi, we have not seen the same pressure necessarily in the smaller cities. So I think for any corporate to make one decision for all women or for young adults or for all their workforce to say, look, everybody work from home and this is what everyone needs, I don't think is wise. We have to learn to slice our data about our employees not only from an age basis, but from different perspectives. Do they have help at home? Do they have staff? What kind of role are they playing? Do they have children? Are they caretakers of somebody? Slice the employee data and the human resource data that gives us an ability to decide what structure will fit what kind of employee. There cannot be one solution that says this is work for everybody, is going to follow exactly the same solution. And there's a growing consensus that women's economic empowerment is necessary to drive global growth and sustainability. Yet companies and governments, as we have seen around the world, have done very little to respond to how the changing nature of work will impact women differently from men. Despite a wealth of research on gender and the future of work through the so-called fourth industrial revolution, even some research has come bringing these topics together, not much has changed. The post-COVID world will be more inclusive for women and for young leaders. The damned question of managing work life, the crazy question of work life balance that every woman has always been asked, is today going to plague men for the first time too. And hopefully in the future, this is not just the women's burden to bear. This will become a reality for most people. We will all have to find this balance in the integration of our professional and personal lives together. Finding that fine line of juggling it all from the same space will become the new normal. Imagine the young kid, and this is also going to open up a lot of talent for a lot of us, right? Because imagine the young kid who wanted to join a startup. He's got tattoos from his neck down to his toenails. He didn't believe he could be fitting into a corporate culture. And therefore he said, let me join a startup. I can be more innovative. I can be free. I can be authentic to who I am. And imagine this guy, he's now working on his own terms. He's bringing innovation, and he could be sitting anywhere in the world. He could be in a tier 2 town. He could be anywhere globally. Today, a corporate has the ability to bring in this kind of talent, bring in innovation, and bring in ideas into the corporate culture without people having to fit in to the same way of dressing, the same way of speaking, the same way of doing presentations, the same way of behaving. I think this can allow us to be more inclusive, regardless of who you are, not only for women and not only for young adults, but even for men who choose to be authentic to their own style. This will allow mainstreaming of a lot of talent, which has not been allowed, or maybe they've been peripheral before. And this will actually allow talent acquisition to get much easier for all corporates going forward. And beneficially, this can happen without a lot of hierarchy. As we talked about self-management, I think one of the things that will come clear is that the people who have the ability to manage themselves with ethics, with conscientiousness, working from home, keeping to their outcomes, keeping to their timelines, probably are not going to be as assaulted by as much hierarchy as we usually have been in corporate culture. And this can actually allow much flatter organizations working from this distance if required. Imagine how corporates will also be able to hire interns and employees from smaller cities and all across the world. And this will help flow innovation into it. Imagine the women team members who are often left out of the boys club because they weren't taking a smoke break for the boys, or they weren't going for an after drink a break. And that allowed a different social engagement. Maybe this will create a more socially equitable environment for the women as well, keeping in mind that they anyway have a very natural work ethic. Imagine the carer who's looking after a baby at home, or a senior family member, and who had to choose between going to work or staying at home and caring. She now has the ability to not only nurture these people that she's been taking care of, but also to nurture herself by being able to work at home and straddling both worlds at her convenience. COVID-19 has challenged business leaders to do three things at one time: stage the return to work, understand and leverage the advancements they enacted during the crisis, and chart a path forward. Focusing on the return alone is not a viable option anymore, as it will not allow organizations to really capitalize on all that we have all experienced and learned over the past few months. Instead, we believe that organizations should embrace what New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman's perspective, that humans who want to adapt in an age of acceleration must develop dynamic stability. Rather than trying to stop, and this is his quote, rather than trying to stop an inevitable storm of change, Friedman encourages leaders to build an eye that moves with the storm, draws energy from it, but creates a platform of dynamic stability within it. This is our new world of dynamic stability. And as a young woman entrepreneur with a 3-month newborn, By the rules of the old world, I should be totally written off. I should have no place in the world. I'm peripheral. If I have to care for my child, I cannot choose to be a woman entrepreneur anymore. How do I run a company with 5,000 people? Those were the choices that faced us. In my own personal experience of the last 3 months, I can tell you, working from my farmhouse outside Bombay and taking care of my child, it has been a new experience altogether. My husband and I always debated whether we'll move to Bombay or to Delhi, and where we're going to live. And honestly, now it doesn't matter so much, because we have the ability to say, look, we can work from anywhere, and we can still go on with our lives without having to choose between all these difficult decisions and conflicts that come up with in life's choices on a daily basis. So I say, in this new world, let's bring it on, because today women and young leaders are more ready, probably, than the rest of the people in the patriarchal world, because we're ready. We know how to be adaptable. We're conscientious. We have the ability to multitask. We have the ability to juggle, and we have the ability to adapt very quickly, to be able to adhere to these new rules of this post-COVID world. I'm very sure that this is going to be a transformational time and a fork in the journey for women that's going to allow talent to come into the mainstream in a far easier manner. It's going to allow younger adults to be part of the mainstream in a far easier manner. And I'm really looking forward and I'm excited to this new post-COVID era that allows us to open our minds, it's not blocked by the typical ways of working in the past, and allows us to experiment and gives everybody a chance to be their individual selves without having to conform and without having to all adapt to a single culture or to a simple methodology. Now, does this bring some challenges with it? Of course it does, no question about it. Everything brings challenges with it. We are going to see challenges of how do you really bring the social cohesion? How do you really give your values and purpose of an organization to all employees, in an organization if you're working from afar? And therefore, we go back to our first point of balance. I don't believe we can move into a world where everybody's just working over Zoom and MS Teams and calls like this. But we have to find a balance between doing a little bit of time where leaders, management teams, and people down the line are finding chances to interact. And at the same time, having the convenience, flexibility to work from home. But as always, in a time of change, some will adapt and some won't. And the ones who adapt and the ones will be the ones who's going to really thrive. And I believe that women and young leaders are the most suited to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ameera, for that absolutely wonderful session. And I know I speak for the audience when I say we are all enthralled by the wonderful words that you spoke. And congratulations for your three-month-old as well.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, one of the key things for the horizon is moving from connection to contribution, while we find a balance between technology, integration, and employee management. Women and young leaders are naturally in a position to positively rise up to the post-COVID world. Managing the self and breaking from traditional patterns can equip employees to navigate the post-pandemic world and foster collaborations within their team. And as you mentioned, self-management is extremely important, a skill that's going to be in huge demand in the future. But I must add that I loved your acronym, ACHU, which we're going to remember going forward. Ameera, we have a lot of questions. It's been such a wonderful session. I'm going to take this opportunity because we do have some time to ask you a few questions now. Sorry, if you just give me a moment. The first question is, some women are also burning out with balancing. What can companies do to help? I'm talking about beyond policies. How do we normalize life and work the way it's done in the US?
Balancing is exhausting, and look, I'm not for sure the one who's had the most experience. For me, it's still early. I've had the last 20 years to really just focus on myself, my career, my family, and not really have to balance as much as probably a lot of women have had to do. What I think we can do more than anything else, I think one is obviously setting policies in place that could to help people do it. And we all know what those policies are, right? Many companies have done them. But I think one thing that not all of us do very well always is really be empathetic, and allow people to have the flexibility to be as individualistic to their problem. Often when we make policies from our own experience. We make policies which is again one solution fits all, because I think mostly as corporates we are afraid of having too much flexibility because we think that that can get abused. And I think what we're learning from this entire crisis is actually flexibility is key. Because each person has their very unique environment and very unique situation, and therefore making one policy that fits everybody just doesn't work. So I think to me, really the takeaway has been how can we create our own flexibility and allow people. So is there a way, for example, we can say there are 10 or 12 criteria and allow each employee to choose the trade-offs. And I use the word trade-offs because that's a very important conversation. Most of us want everything, but we're not willing to give up anything. And I think the ability to say, look, I want this. I want to be able to work from home, have flexibility to take care of my kid, but I'm willing to give up X, Y, Z. And I think if we can all understand this notion of trade-offs, I think building that flexibility in the corporate culture will become much easier.
Some wonderful points covered by you, Ameera. The next question is, doesn't experience matter? I get that younger minds would bring you young ideas, but to uplift a new idea, we need people with experience.
Look, I think this is the trade-old discussion of experience and this. And I don't think it's a this or that. Often we have seen a lot of innovative ideas coming in from younger people for the simple reason they're not jaded, they're not conditioned by what was possible in the past and not possible in the past. And therefore, young people are able to bring that innovation. Do they sometimes have the experience? Maybe not. And therefore, it might take more time. It might burn more cash, as we have seen with a lot of startups, to be able to get the methodology right in terms of what works and what doesn't work. But that experience sometimes also stops us from experimenting. And experimentation is the key to innovation. Innovation doesn't come about by sitting in one spot under the people tree and enlightenment, right? It comes through trial and error. So I think, again, it's a combination and a balance, my favorite word. But you do need the best of both. There's no question about it.
Thank you, Ameera. The next question I'm going to shoot is, there is a lot of fear with everyone coming back to work. How do we create an atmosphere of trust and safety so that people do come back?
So what I've learned is that trust and safety are not points of communication. They are points of action. Trust cannot be built by telling each other, let's build trust. Trust has to be built by action. And it's about the organization first demonstrating that we trust our employees. And then our employees, like Santrup said in the last session, which I got at the end, innocent until proven guilty, right? So let's start by giving trust. And that's all about action. We can stand on the rooftops and talk about how to build trust, and we can do all kinds of team building skills and do games and exercises that allow teams to come together. But there are small things that people can do that allow that trust to be seen. For example, I know one of the corporates, actually it's Harsh at Marico, who started doing one thing very simple. He'd completely removed attendance management and attendance monitoring from the workspace almost 15 years ago. And they said that, look, if we've hired our employees, we trust them. Why are we sitting and checking their bills and their vouchers and their attendance? We're going to trust everybody. And only if you guys do something that breaks our trust, only then we will actually change any policy or, take some action against you. So I think it's about the step by step and building trust at every situation. I think during this crisis, we've all had a huge opportunity to build trust with our employees. Have we fired? Have we maintained salaries? Have we done pay cuts? Have we made life very difficult for people, or have we made life easier as an organization? I think that's going to stay in the memory of employees for a long time.
So true, Ameera. I think the part about trust is also very self-liberating. I think when one is able to trust as well. I'm going to ask you one more question, which is more of the generic type. We hear from some doctors that this new normal will recede in 2021. What do you think? Are we overestimating the new normal?
I think we are overestimating the new normal today. Like I was saying, I think usually human emotions swing in a pendulum. I think today we are, going extreme to extreme. We've all been locked up, in our cages now for months. I think everybody's been desperate to get out. I do believe that post the hype of this all settling down, I do believe that we will find a new normal, which will be somewhere in between what we think it's going to be and what it is today, and what it was yesterday. What that balance will be, I think, will be different and unique for every company, for every individual. And again, I think the key will be just to build flexibility. I think as organizations, this will keep changing. And today, while COVID seems like the be all and the end all, we all have COVID coming out of our ears, nose, throats, every every orifice in the body. The reality is, if you actually look in history, the Spanish flu was the one which was actually remembered in 1918. Even though we've had 2 or 3 epidemics since then, nobody's actually talking about those influenza crises that we had, whether it was the bird flu, in the Asian flu that happened. And I think COVID, while it seems very important today, the new normal will take a few good things from it. But I don't think it's going to completely change life forever.
That was wonderful, Ameera. Thank you so much. And thanks once again for a very, very interesting talk, a topic close to my heart as well. And the audience has absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Thank you.